Hi there. I am hopping on once more tonight. I wanted to touch base on intermittent fasting. I did have a couple of you ask a few questions about this before sending out macros, and then one more question after sending out macros. So I thought it'd be a good thing to just touch base on, and I will try to find an infographic to go along with this one as well. So this program, there's a lot of structure, right? With this program, I've basically mapped out every single day for the next 6 weeks of what I'm going to be discussing and all the different topics. But anytime we have questions come up in the group, I will do my best to, post on those topics and give you the information and answer your questions the best that I can. So this whole program is going to be a mix of both structure and then whatever comes up with the group. All right. So a lot of people are talking about intermittent fasting right now. We see a lot of posts on social media. I've seen it on TV shows. It's basically all over. So first of all, what is intermittent fasting? And I'm going to keep this really as basic and simple as possible because I don't want to focus too much on intermittent fasting, but it is important for you to understand what it is. So basically, very basic, is it's shortening your feeding window. Okay, so when you're doing intermittent fasting practice, you are basically going to be eating in a shorter period of time. The most popular way to do IF is eating between noon and 8. So a really popular structure with intermittent fasting is you fast for 16 hours and then you allow yourself an 8-hour window. This is just the most popular structure. Can be set up in different ways, but most intermittent fasting programs are set up this way. Also, I do want to throw out a caveat that I am not an intermittent fasting expert. I don't know a ton about intermittent fasting. I haven't practiced it personally, intentionally anyway. And so everything I'm giving you is just what I know about it. And if you have a lot more questions on intermittent fasting, I definitely recommend, doing additional research and maybe talking to someone that you know is an expert. So intermittent fasting, basically it gives your system, your digestive system in particular, a chance to recover. And there's a process called autophagy that runs, and it basically is a cleaning of the inside of your body. Your body runs this process where it breaks down cells, and that's basically what's happening. With intermittent fasting, for fat loss or weight loss, intermittent fasting is not proven to be superior. Okay, I'm not saying that it is not effective, but it is not a superior technique when it comes to fat loss and weight loss. The most important piece of the puzzle, really, when it comes to losing fat is the caloric deficit. And I touched on caloric deficit in each of the emails that I sent you if I sent you fat loss macros. So caloric deficit basically just means you're eating less than what your body is burning. And that is that is definitely the only way to tackle fat loss or weight loss, okay? There are some benefits to intermittent fasting that I have definitely seen, and I've seen it work for clients before as well. So benefits for intermittent fasting: if your schedule is really weird, you may find that you're accidentally or unintentionally doing intermittent fasting, and that can definitely happen. Say you have kind of a weird morning, or all of your meetings are always scheduled for the mornings, you're on the phone, you're trying to get kids to school, whatever it is, and it's not very convenient for you to eat breakfast, and you can't get to your first meal until, say, noon. Okay, this could be a great strategy for you, intermittent fasting. Remember, you have that specific window, shorter time window if you are doing intermittent fasting, and typically that's a 16-hour fast with an 8-hour window. If you are finding that being in a caloric deficit is very challenging, intermittent fasting can make that a little bit easier as well, because you have basically a less amount of time to eat. So if you're feeling hungry, but you know you're set on this intermittent fasting feeding period, this may be a good strategy for you. If you're a grazer and you go over on your calories a lot, and the caloric deficit has been challenging, setting the time limit in an intermittent fasting window can be beneficial. Lastly, if you prefer larger meals, intermittent fasting may be better for you because you can have just like a couple larger meals in that 8-hour period and then you're good. Okay. Really, when it comes to all of the work that we're doing, everything is going to be very individual based on your schedule, your preferences, lots of different factors. I also do want to say that you can work out fasted. Some people prefer not to. It's all a matter of preference, honestly. And then you do also want to take into account what type of training you're doing. For instance, I train at 6 o'clock in the morning most days. And when I first started training mornings, it was actually very difficult for me to eat before. Eating at 5 a.m. was not something that was easy for me. And working out with food in my stomach was actually a little bit uncomfortable. So I would work out fasted often. Now that I'm working a different type of program with heavier weight, I have to eat before because I need a little bit of a boost. Just my body needs it right now. So this is all a matter of preference. It is okay to work out fasted though. But listen to your body. If something's going on, you may need to make adjustments. So think about what suits your lifestyle right now when it comes to intermittent fasting and whether or not it makes sense for you. I do want to also put a few points out where I do not recommend intermittent fasting. Some of those reasons would be if you are someone that has had binging or restriction issues in the past with food, I do not recommend intermittent fasting. If you are really starving and not comfortable, I would stay away from it as well because your feeding window is very short. Now, there's a difference between struggling with caloric deficit and then starving. So if you're starving and you're not comfortable with not eating, do not do intermittent fasting. Lastly, if you have any other kind of weird eating behaviors in the past or that come up easily for you, I wouldn't recommend an 8-hour window with a 16-hour fast. Okay? Macros. You still want to hit your macros even if you are doing intermittent fasting. Even if your window is short, you still have the same macros. Macros are not adjusted for intermittent fasting. It can be really hard for some of us to do. IF is not for me because I need an entire day to space out the amount of food that I am eating. And especially in the beginning of tracking macros, it can feel like a lot of protein. By the way, you will get used to that. I promise you. That's basically what everyone experiences in the beginning. Our body's adjusting to a different split out of macros, basically. And then I personally, if you're brand new to tracking macros, I would probably stay away from intermittent fasting just because you don't want to try to put two things at once that are brand new on top of one another. That can be a little bit overwhelming. Also, if you find the calories that I have given you seem a little bit low or you feel a little bit hungry, I would probably stay away from intermittent fasting for now. Maybe not forever. On that point, and I have spoken to a few of you on this as well, but I wasn't super aggressive with the caloric deficit multipliers that I used for macros. And I'll explain, I'm not sure which day I have it scheduled, but I'll talk a little bit more about how I calculate macros. I've already talked to some of you about it, but when I'm putting your macros together, I am not super aggressive in that multiplier because I really want to set up clients with goals that we can realistically adhere to and comply with, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in our bodies when we first put it in a caloric deficit. And so I've adjusted these macros so that I think that you can get to those numbers and still have a lot of success and be working towards your goals. So I would be really surprised if a lot of you are feeling like you don't have enough food or enough calories. I did see a couple comments earlier today that there's a little bit of hunger going on and I need to take a look at your numbers. But keep in mind that I very intentionally don't set super, super aggressive caloric deficit multipliers on macro numbers, okay? So that's a little bit on intermittent fasting with a little extra on the macro side. If you have any questions, please comment in this video. I'll look for a good infographic that kind of just explains the process a little bit more, since I am not an expert necessarily in that science and that process. And I hope this is helpful for you. Have a good night, everyone.